got 24 participants as of right now, and somewhere in the low 30s were signed up. So that's wonderful. That's great participation. Good morning, good afternoon at this point. I'm Katie Drescher. I'm an ACC coach in Madison and a new member of the Wisconsin ICF Education and Development Committee. I am so happy that you're all joining us today for the webinar. Thank you so much for Charity's presentation on coaching presence, 3 practices to use right away to enhance partnering. We're very happy to have you with us. And before I introduce Charity, we have got a message from our new 2019 Wisconsin ICF Board President, Ndidi Yaucher. And Ndidi had a schedule conflict and wasn't able to be with us in person, so she has a tape message.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ndidi Yaucher, and I am the president of ICF Wisconsin. I would like to welcome you to the first ICF Wisconsin educational webinar for 2019. I would first like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the Education and Development Committee for all of their time and effort that they've taken to make sure that the list of topics of webinars that we have this year meets the needs of its members and also enhances the competency skills and provide you all with the resources and tools that you would need to advance your coaching skills. Our vision at ICF Wisconsin is always focused on the 4 C's, and the 4 C's stand for community, connection, collaboration, and competency. Our vision is to create a community of professional coaches, connect with those that we serve, find opportunities for our members to collaborate with one another and also with our alliances, and lastly, to develop the competency of our members. I am very excited for our webinar topic today with Charity Gent, which will focus on coaching presence. Charity, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your knowledge with us. Thank you all for joining, and please feel free to reach out either to myself or to any of the board members to share your thoughts, provide us with any feedback that you might have, or to share your skills and knowledge to assist the chapter in reaching our vision. I'd like to pass this back to the Education Committee and thank you all for your time.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Ndidi, for that tape message, and thank you, Meredith, for figuring out the tech to make it possible for us this morning. That's wonderful. As Ndidi said, we're at the first webinar for 2019. We've got a great lineup, and we're very excited to welcome this morning Charity Gent. And let me introduce Charity. Charity is the lead instructor and program director for the University of Wisconsin Certified Professional Coach Program. Charity is also a faculty associate and a professional leadership development coach, communication expert, and team building specialist, as well as the owner of Charity Gent Coaching and Consulting, Inc. Charity's worked as a coach, trainer, and consultant for nearly 20 years. She began her coaching career as an internal corporate coach for an international franchise. In 2011, she launched her own boutique coaching and consulting firm and has had the pleasure of serving clients around the globe. Charity is known for her high energy, dynamic facilitation skills, and empathetic and direct leadership style. A certified professional coactive coach, member of the ICF, Charity is routinely voted one of Wisconsin's favorite life coaches in Madison by readers of the Isthmus and Brava magazine. So thank you very much, Charity. We are thrilled to have you here to kick off our webinar series. So I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Welcome, everybody. I am going to just share my screen here because I've got some slides that I think will help facilitate our learning and discussion today. There we go. All right, so everybody should be seeing a slide now, which is the title slide of the presentation. And today we're talking all about coaching presence, and particularly regarding practices that we can use right away to enhance partnering in our coaching relationships. So let's go to it. Again, welcome everybody. Thank you, Katie, for the great introduction. It was nice to hear and see Ndidi. It's great to be able to hear from her as the president and to welcome everyone into the new year. So, you're in the right place here if you are a coach who desires to serve your clients more fully. Maybe you're seeking to understand what coaching presence is and what it isn't. Know that coaching presence is one of those ICF core competencies that you're supposed to be able to show or express a behavioral skill in, but you may not really know how that translates in practice when you're actually working with your clients. And maybe you're here because you just want to know about how you can enhance your own presence, starting right away with your next session. So all of those are great places to begin. If that's why you're here, then you're in the right place. And hopefully today I can share with you some of the things that I know to be true about presence and that I've experienced in trying to develop my own coaching presence over the years, and that you'll walk away with some knowledge you can use right away. All right, so before we get started, just some housekeeping. First of all, let's be fully present here, and go ahead and silence your phone and put your email on Do Not Disturb, and just, really give yourself the gift of being here in this moment. I think all too often we try to multitask, especially during webinars like this. I know, guilty. But if we're gonna be about presence today, why don't we actually practice it? So go ahead and silence that cell phone, turn off that email. The webinar is scheduled to go till about 1:30 Central Time. I actually have an end, I think, at about 1:20, and we can open it up for some questions and or final comments for Katie at that time. I encourage you throughout to take notes. I actually will be stopping throughout the presentation a couple different times. I've got some slides in there to do what I call check-in and chat, which means that you will be able to interact with me, hopefully, through the chat box. So I will have some prompts or questions up on the screen, and we'll give you a few moments to respond in your chat boxes. And perhaps at that time, too, I think we mentioned a minute ago, we'll unmute everybody or particular individuals who raise their hand. Meredith, I'll look to you to give us some more information at that time on best ways to do that. But we will interact a little bit and have a discussion, because I think that a lot of times the best way we learn is by talking back and forth and not necessarily just hearing me on and on to you and at you. I also want to invite you to obviously throughout ask your questions in the chat box, and know that if I don't answer your question at some point throughout the webinar, that we will get to that at the very end. And be sure you stick around to the very end, because I'm going to offer you not just 3 practices you can use right away, but I've got some bonus other ones. Exciting. All right. Oh, and you will get a recording and slides afterward. I think Meredith said she plans to get those out in the next few days. So if you would like to have those afterwards, know that those are coming. All right, so you've already gotten my introduction. Again, I'm just the director and lead instructor of the UW-Madison Certified Professional Coach Program, formerly known as the Professional Life Coaching Certificate Program. And also run my own business. I'm about 80% time at the UW running that program. Love it. It's new to me this year. I sort of took the torch, if you will, from Darcy Loma, and am now leading that program. And on the side, or I shouldn't say on the side, but a certain portion of my business is still dedicated to actually doing coaching, because I believe it's very important as an instructor of coaches to keep my toes in the water of really coaching, so that I can continue to empathize and understand the real problems and challenges that face coaches who are in practice every day. So I still do some of that, and I still do a little bit of organizational development work. I am DISC certified, so I do a lot of that kind of work, and then that tends to typically lead to individual coaching relationships with leaders and talent development professionals. So that is me in a nutshell. And my big thing this year that I am pursuing is my MCC candidacy, which is, I'll be honest, kicking my butt a little bit. It is really good, though. I'm learning so much, and so much about presence, that I can't wait to share with you. So let's get going here. One of the reasons that I went into coaching to begin with, and one of the reasons that I am so excited to talk with you about the importance of presence in coaching specifically, is because I believe that at the end of the day, I want to help fuel a more empathetic and compassionate world. And coaching is one of those professions or tools that we can use, in my opinion, to do that quite effectively. So being a coach and teaching others how to be coaches really aligns beautifully with my big why in life. And some days I just want to pinch myself that I get to do this work and that I get to share this work with good people like yourselves. So what brings me then to talk about presence, and why is presence so important here in this world of coaching? Well, I believe that presence is one of the key elements that can either reinvigorate and or refuel a coaching practice. Maybe even to some degree, reroute it if it's gone off track a little bit. So I want to tell you a little story here about myself. And some of you may resonate with this or feel like, yep, I understand, I get it, that's me too. Others may be like, not so much. But I, as a regular practice, listen to recordings of myself with my clients. It's just a good way to really, I think, hone your skills, and I would encourage everybody to do that if you don't. But it's just an amazing way to see how you're showing up, your presence in a lot of ways, and your skill levels and how they're developing over time. And so a few years ago, maybe not even that long ago, I was listening to some recordings, and I noticed that as I was going through all the different skills in my mind that I needed to be using as a coach, the presence, the skill of coaching presence, in my estimation, was sorely lacking in my coaching. Not that I wasn't being attuned and there with my clients, but there was something that felt a little off. And I noticed that I was doing a lot more leading of my clients than probably I should have or could have been. And these are, by the way, these are all habits that you develop over time. I got certified from CTI. That was the coaching school I went to at the time. I got certified in 2010. And so over the years, I learned that I developed some habits that may not be great in terms of being a skillful coach. And the good news is you can change those, but you first have to become aware of them, which is why the recording, in my opinion, and listening to it is so key. So I was noticing and listening to mine that I was doing a lot more leading of my clients instead of allowing them to lead sometimes. I also noticed that at times my coaching just felt flat. There was no resonance in some of my conversations. And I kept thinking, what the heck is going on here? I'm a good coach. I know what to do. I've been well trained. I'm experienced. I found myself coaching the problem and not the person. Really wanting to get in there and rescue my clients. Oh, I got the solution for you, right? Because they come to us and they think, in the beginning anyway, before we educate them otherwise, they think that we have the answer so that we can somehow help them find, or we do help them find the answer that they self-discover. But many people come to coaching with the misconception that it's consulting. And we know that's not true, but it takes some time to educate your clients about that. But nonetheless, I found I was doing a lot more telling, probably, and wanting to solve their problem than was probably right. I was going into fix-it mode, right? And just in general, I was getting off of coaching calls feeling exhausted. Like I had been working super hard on behalf of my client. And I can remember back in coaching school, we talked about if you feel like you're working too hard for your client, if you feel like you're doing too much of the heavy lifting, you probably are. And you need to stop because you're not being present and you're not dancing in the moment with your client. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that. Or at least it went in more to the back recesses of my mind. Now, that's not to say I wasn't serving my clients and my clients weren't getting value. It's just to say that I was hindering my ability to take my coaching skills to that proverbial next level. So, what did that lead me to? Well, it made me realize that I needed to change some things up. And so right away, I started realizing that I needed to get rid of this mindset of having this checklist in my mind of things I needed to do. And maybe some of you can relate to this, where you go into a coaching session, you're like, okay, I need to spend the first part really getting clear on the topic. And then I need to make sure that I've gone in and I've done at least a really good, meaty portion of it around coaching. And that within that meaty portion, 80% of that coaching session where we're coaching around the client's topic and getting to the outcomes they want to achieve, I got to make sure I'm asking powerful questions, actively listening, directly communicating, and you know how it goes from there. So I found myself, instead of just being in the moment present with the client, dancing and following and discovering with them. I was instead very much not. I was going through these checklists in my head, wanting to make sure I was being the perfect coach and getting the whole structure of the coaching session perfect. Well, we know how that goes, right? Another thing that I did for a very long time that I feel like took me out of my presence was that I took a lot of notes in my sessions. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take notes in your sessions. Please don't mishear me. I'm just telling you what I noticed about myself, is that I would take a lot of notes in my sessions. And I did that because I felt like I wanted to be able to track my clients' progress over time and to be really, I thought putting paper to pen and pen to paper was helping me stay really in tune with my client and where they were at and what they needed and make sure we were heading in the right direction. And I wasn't trusting the coaching process and my own skills and my client's ability to lead us by picking up that pen so much. So I learned I had to put the pen down and really just be the portal. Almost like, imagine like I've got this third eye, right? The proverbial third eye, and just allowing wisdom to come through me. I am the portal through which whatever needs to be said to the client in the moment, whatever they need to say, there's space for it. And it will show up as it's supposed to. And so those were some of the things that I thought right away I could change up. So what I really hope for you here today is that you can learn from my experience, and that what I'm about to share with you, coupled with that experience, can help you create or increase your own coaching presence and use it to evolve as not just a coach, but a human being. So here's where we're headed. We're going to talk about the critical role of coaching presence. We're going to discuss what it means to partner as a coach. And then I'm going to wrap at the end with 3 practices that you can use right away to enhance your coaching presence and partner with your client starting at your next session. I'm also probably going to weave around a bit and do a few other peppered things in there, but this is the big picture of where we're headed today. All right. So what is coaching presence? When I first heard this word, coaching presence, or saw this competency, I went, huh? What? But really, coaching presence is defined by the ICF simply as the ability to be fully conscious, and create spontaneous relationship with the client, employing a style that is open, flexible, and confident. It is also about dancing in the moment. Those are words that we got from some of our forefathers and mothers in the coaching movement, right? Karen Kimsey House and Henry House. They talk a lot. They're the leaders of the Coaches Training Institute, and they wrote that book that a lot of people start off with when they embark on a coaching journey, coactive coaching. And in that book, they talk about this notion of dancing in the moment with the client, being fully present, being flexible, flexing around, going where the client needs to go, being with them at every turn and twist, not saying, wait, we're supposed to do these steps, or, oh no, we need to go over to that part of the dance floor. No, it's really, that metaphor is beautiful, but it's really about just going with the rhythm of the conversation and where it's taking you. And sometimes you might be tangoing, sometimes you might be waltzing, and it's your job as the coach to be able to flex and be present in the moment with that client in doing that. And then finally, I think coaching presence, or not, I don't think, the ICF defines coaching presence as being curious, right? Trust your gut, experiment, use humor. I almost think of this third point as show up as a human being. Show up as yourself. It's really that simple. Really, truly is. And that is what I like to think of in my own words when I think about coaching presence. I think about coaching presence, and this is what I've learned about it. It is about being 150% being with your client. You're just right in there with them, All distractions gone. You are just right here with the client and right here with the client. And you are right here with the client first as a human being. One of the key parts of presence is being a human being first. And we'll talk more about exactly how that breaks down. But first, show up as a human being. And then second, show up as their coach. And you do this for the purpose of conducting a soulful and this is the key, soulful and purposeful conversation. And that conversation, as we all know, is intended to move that client forward in their preferred direction around whatever topic they're bringing that day to the session, while also holding that bigger agenda of the clients in our heads and in our hearts. And then really working with that client to deepen awareness, right, around who they are and who they need and want to become in order to accomplish whatever it is they're setting out to accomplish. So the what is important, of course, the goals or whatever it is they want to get done, the action, but the who behind it, the human being behind it is really an important component of coaching, and presence allows us to dig into that at a level that we just can't get to otherwise. It's really hard to coach to the who of a client if you're not first present. And as you progress through your coaching designations, for those of you who are interested in doing that, so going from ACC to PCC, PCC to MCC, as you move up that ladder of skill level, you will find that presence becomes even more and more important, and coaching to the who, particularly at the MCC level, is key. We don't expect our ACC level coaches to understand and be skillful in that, but certainly by the time you're going for that MCC level, you need to be darn sure you're coaching to the who and really helping the client deepen that awareness around who they are and who they need to become or what they want to become in order to accomplish what it is they're setting out to do. So that doing and being always comes back around, doesn't it? All right. I've hinted a little bit about why coaching presence is important, but I wanted to spend a little time here talking about it more at length. So the reason that we talk about presence so much is because truly coaching presence is at the core of what coaching is all about. All of the other competencies, all of the other skills, all of the other stuff of professional coaching all revolves around this core known as presence. When presence is there, you automatically get powerful questions. When presence is fully developed, direct communication is the only possibility. When presence is there and really working at its full maximum capacity, awareness and learning is an automatic outcome. Huge, deep awareness and learning. And part of what allows that presence to be so powerful is basically four things that you see up here in front of you. Presence is about partnering. Again, about that deep, soulful conversation that you're having with that other person. It's that whole notion of you're being fully over there with your client, straight up in the moment. You don't necessarily get enmeshed with him or her, but you are literally right there with that client for every step and turn and twist, like I said before. Just super clued in. Presence is also very much about connection. And I think that when we think about connection, we're thinking about connection to the whole client, to the who of the client, to how the client thinks and feels and responds and learns, and also too what the client has to teach us. This is the thing that I find the more along my journey I get as a coach, the more I realize that these sessions are so much about the client and where they're headed, but I find, wow, I learned so much too in every single session. And a lot of that is fueled by me trusting in the coaching process, trusting in my own skills as a coach, and trusting that the client knows what they need and knows how to lead me in that direction. And so trust is a big part of presence as well. And when you start to not trust yourself, or maybe subconsciously you don't trust your client, that was a big aha moment. I remember when I figured that out. That happened to me actually not even long ago. I was doing a recording, and this one was being evaluated by an assessor. And she said to me, "You don't trust your client." there's points in here where you're questioning your client. And I thought, what are you talking about? I don't trust my client. I've been working with this woman for 4 months. We have a lot of trust and intimacy. How could she be saying that? And after I kind of gained some space from it and was able to look through a little more of an objective lens at my own work, I thought, yeah. I listened to that recording again and realized I wasn't trusting my client. And so I had to have a conversation with my client about that and talk through that with him or her. So the other thing I would encourage you to think about here too in terms of presence is curiosity. And we all know that being curious and coming from that state of curiosity and asking those really powerful questions is really, it's really the center of what we do as coaches, right? Always helping to deepen the learning and forward the action. And so I think that need for complete curiosity is really important for presence too. When you let go of a need to perform or be the great coach for your client and just get really curious with them and with what they're talking about and more even so, who they are, you'll be amazed at what gets revealed and how you can really just stay right with them step by step, not missing a beat, not stepping over anything, because everything becomes a data point about which you can be curious, very gently and sincerely curious. So, how do you know if your presence is lacking? Well, I would say right out of the gate, one of the biggest things is that you're not truly partnering. At the essence of coaching and at the essence of presence is this notion of partnering. We are partnering with our clients. It is a peer-to-peer relationship. There is no hierarchy. And we can look to various indicators that we might be lacking presence. So I'm just going to offer some here to you on these next 2 slides. And I want you to think about, really take a moment and be honest with yourself and think about whether or not you are adequately partnering. And if you want, maybe this would be kind of fun on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself with 1 being low and 10 being super high. In general, how do you think you do on each one of these indicators? So number 1, do you use the client's language to really customize your conversation and to really make them feel like they're being heard, that you aren't using sort of the more canned or pat questions? It's not that you can't use those, and not that it's not helpful at times to use those, but as you evolve in your own coaching skill and development, you're going to want to start to incorporate more of that client language into your coaching sessions. So if the client is talking about, they lack life balance and they wish they had more of an ability to juggle all the balls, you don't want to say next, what's important about that necessarily. You would say instead something like, so what's important about life balance and being able to juggle all the balls? Or what's it like for you to juggle all the balls and find life balance? Or you get what I mean. You're using their language. So try to start bringing some more of that in if you aren't. But certainly if you find that you're not doing that now, that might be one area where you can strengthen how you're partnering with your client. The second thing up here in terms of indicators that you might be lacking presence and that you're not truly partnering is that you're focusing on solutions, right, and problem solving. And you're not listening for the emotion and or the energy behind what the client is bringing. Like I said at the beginning of the webinar, I found myself doing this, sliding back into that habit of wanting to, even though I knew better, wanting to solve the problem for the client. It happens to all of us at all skill levels. The important thing is to be aware of it and to notice it when you're doing it. And to remember that your client doesn't hire you to help them solve their problems. They hire you to hold the space for them, to self-discover the answer to those problems. And I think the minute that coaches click that into place in their brain is the minute coaching changes radically for you. I think in the beginning when we're newer coaches, at least I'm speaking from my experience, even though they told me intellectually that I'm not supposed to solve my clients' problems, I used to always feel like, yeah, but I mean, what value am I providing if I'm not doing that? The value you provide is in deepening the awareness around what the client is experiencing about their journey and themselves, and that is priceless. It is so rare in our world that another human being sits with us for a length of time dedicated completely with the spotlight on us as client to hear us, to see us, to witness us, to be with us fully. And that is the gift, and that is the value in coaching. And some people might say, well, yeah, but my friends do that, so why would I pay a coach? Well, because with coaching, we're taking that level of conversation, that soulfulness, and we're adding purpose to it. And we're working toward the client's specified or preferred outcomes. That's the difference. Friends don't necessarily do that, right? At all, usually. Unless they're a coach, then maybe they might. But you get the idea. Another thing up here that might be an indicator that you're lacking presence and not truly partnering is that you don't explore dissonance. And here's what I mean by that. When someone says to you something like, and I just saw this with a client the other day, she was telling me about she was having this horrible time at work, and this coworker was being awful to her, and this was what was happening, XYZ, and she didn't like it, and she wanted to figure out how does she tell this coworker, et cetera, et cetera. And she did it all with a smile. You know, I just don't understand. I want them to do this differently with me in the future. I don't want them to be always saying these things to me like this, you know? And she was kind of giving me, and I don't mean to mock her at all, but she was giving me this smile. Yet I could, what she was presenting here in the session and in the tone of her voice did not match the words that were coming out of her mouth. And so I didn't judge her for that. I just gently got curious with her and said, you know, I see that you're saying this, but I'm almost wondering if I'm sensing there's some of X, Y, or Z behind the words. What's your experience of that here when I say that? And so it created a whole new opening for the client where she went, huh, you know, you might be right. And I can still see her. It literally stopped her in her tracks. And she realized that she needed to pause and get curious about what was going on there with that situation and with herself. So don't bypass those opportunities to truly partner and call out, not call out, but get curious about behaviors that don't necessarily match words in the session. Fourth thing here, you might be lacking presence if you're not offering insights that can benefit your client. We definitely want to hold space and give the client the majority of the time to speak because, you know, obviously if we're not doing that, we're moving more into teaching mode or telling mode. So you want to make sure you're giving a lot of space for your client to explore, discover, and it is your job and responsibility as the coach to offer insights when it feels right to you, when you believe this could be a point of learning for your client. So you may offer an insight by saying something like, you know, I'm hearing an energy shift as you talk about this next part of the story. What's your experience like? Are you hearing it too? Or, you know, just, I'm picking up on X, Y, or Z. What is that for you? Just being really generous in your offering of insights, because a lot of times it's those critical insights that really give a client pause and can help them deepen their awareness. So you don't want to be doing that constantly throughout, but certainly you don't want to just remain silent and just let the client keep rambling on, right? You want to make sure that you're helping them to always be deepening awareness. All right, some more indicators that your presence might be lacking in your coaching. Maybe you, again, see some of these in your own coaching. The coach does not acknowledge the client's strengths or values in a way that can help aid the client. It's important that you hold those values of your client in the front of every session, or not, maybe not in the front of every session, but always at the top of mind when you go into these sessions with your client. That big A agenda, we sometimes like to call it, and that you're acknowledging your client's strength in living in alignment with those values and in doing the hard stuff and in taking the bold actions. Very important to do so that your client feels like you're partnering, you're right there with them and you get it. It's not so much cheerleading. It's really more about a sincere acknowledgement of their progress, and that you see it, and that you notice it, and that can be fuel to keep going sometimes. Also, you want to be aware of whether or not you're encouraging reflection about learning, either past or present, in your sessions. If you're really partnering, you're going to, more often than not, be asking the client throughout the session, not just at the end, but what's becoming more apparent to you here? Or what's different for you now from when we started talking about this a few minutes ago? Or where are you now versus where we started? Or what are you learning so far in this conversation about XYZ? These are all ways you can, what I like to think of as check in and make sure that people are given an opportunity to reflect on all of the learning and thinking that's going on so that they can lock it in a little bit. And giving them an ability to say back to you what they are learning not only helps you as the coach make sure you're staying on the right track and that you're staying very present with where the client's at, but it also gives them an opportunity to really partner with you to share with you and solidify in their own mind what's becoming more, I guess, what they're becoming more aware of is really the best way to say it. The learning. It's all about the learning. Another thing, if you're leading the clients, and a lot of times we lead clients and don't even realize we're doing it. I happen to have a couple of bad habits I picked up over the years where I'll say to my client, it sounds like, so this is an example of leading. I would say something to the client like, it sounds like you're really becoming more of a spiritual being, right? Do you hear that on the end? That, right? That's leading the client. I didn't even think of it that way when I was doing it until an assessor called me out on it, and I was like, oh, that's true. And so I've been trying to ixnay that from my vocabulary, because that's just part of natural conversation. We say that, right? And then another example of how you might be leading and not even know it would be, what was I just going to tell you? I had another good example I was going to use. It'll come back to me. But in any case, don't lead your clients. You want to allow them to do as much leading as possible. Now, of course, and this is where the art of coaching comes in, and this is the nuance part that everybody groans about, but of course there are going to be times when you do a little bit of leading in the sense of maybe offering an insight or interrupting for a good reason to highlight or acknowledge, whatever it might be. There are going to be those moments, but they are very few and far between. By and large, to be fully present with your client, you want to let them lead and just stay right there with them every step of the way. Ears, eyes, senses, everything. All levels of listening, engaged, particularly levels 2 and 3. Also make sure and notice if you are finishing the client's sentences or making up interpretations of your own about what the client thinks about a particular idea, word, phrase. So they may say to you things like, my life is really out of balance. Well, don't assume that you know what balance is. Good partnering is stopping in the moment and getting curious and asking, what is balance like for you? What does that look like for you? What is an unbalanced life like for you? If your life really were balanced, what would that be like? Those are all ways that you can really partner with your client in that moment to not assume you understand what balance means, but to really make sure that you're both on the same page with what balance means or whatever the topic is. And then finally, this one here, you're not truly partnering if you are interrupting a lot and not at critical junctures. And we talked about that just a minute ago. All right, so let's check in and chat for a moment here. And I want to hear, there's 2 questions, 2 prompts I've given you here, and feel free to chat in the chat box, or Meredith, if you'd like, you can open up or unmute people who have raised their hands. And I would invite you, Meredith, here to tell us how people could do that. The 2 questions are, what are you learning about coaching and presence that you didn't know before we started this webinar? And then what other questions or comments come to mind as you're learning about coaching presence? So I'll hand it over to you guys.
So you're more than welcome to type your questions in the chat, and Katie can monitor that. If you want to raise your hand, I think there's an option. Oh, I wish I knew where it was because I'm always at the admin. I'm never a participant.
Oh, I know. It's under participants. I think if you click participants, there's an option at the very bottom, I want to say.
Yeah. And some folks are using the Q&A. It's fine. You can use either one.
Okay, yeah, we've got a Q&A comment of, I love your practical examples, very powerful.
Thank you. Good. Learn from my mistakes.
Yeah, and in the chat, love the comment, deepen the learning and forward the action.
Yes. That's an old comment I got once from, or something I picked up in coaching school a long time ago. And it just really hit me. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're up to here. So good. I'm glad you picked up on that.
I really appreciated the perspective of the third eye and opening a portal that creates space for the client. That was great.
And it takes the pressure off of us, right? To have to come up with the perfect question or say the right comment. Just allow the insights to flow, allow the right question to emerge.
Here we have a couple more coming up. Jane says, really awesome reminders to check my bad and unintentional habits. Holding the space is the value of coaching. Sandy says, thank you, Charity, for your expertise. I have found demonstrating presence in the sales process is also so critical.
Huge. Yes, Sandy, I agree. I used to do sales before going into coaching. It was through sales that I came to coaching, actually. And yeah, if you are not present with your client, whether it's a sales client or a coaching client, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss the whole enchilada. So good connection.
Great. I am happy to read these, but if anybody wants to participate, just write me in the chat and Meredith will open up your mic.
So Christine Butterfield has raised her hand. So Chris, I'm going to allow you to talk. So give me just a second. It takes just a second.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. No, I've been listening to all the other comments as well, but when you spoke about the note-taking, it just made me stop in my, I'm a huge note taker. And so to kind of think about, just to step back from that a little bit, maybe look at my own why, you know, why do I feel the need to take so many? That was really helpful to me. I just wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, good. I know when someone first said it to me, I was like, what? And then a coaching buddy of mine and I challenged each other one week. We're like, this whole next week, let's really practice presence by not taking notes. And I thought, I don't know if I can do that. Oh my goodness, Christine, I did it and it changed everything.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, at the end, I would jot a few notes to myself about what we talked about so I could remember. But by and large, putting that pen down really helps with my presence for sure. You know, another thing I do, and I don't think I have it anywhere in this presentation, I will sometimes close my eyes. Like I will just, well, if I'm sitting across from somebody, I don't do this, but on a phone call, I will literally just close my eyes and really tune in to what they're, to the energy and the tone and the levels 2 and 3. And I find I get so much from that too. Real presence is emerging from that.
Thank you. That's great.
We also have a comment in the Q&A from Lori Crawford, who says, even though I know better, I'm a note taker. Thank you for the reminder that it takes us out of presence.
Welcome, Lori. So understand where you're coming from. So maybe you want to try challenging yourself to a session or 2 of no notes and see how that works. I would encourage that of anybody who finds that that might be something they'd like to try.
Yeah.
And Lori would actually like to talk. Was that a comment from Lori? I'm sorry, I was.
Yep, that'd be great. Yeah, that's okay.
So Lori Crawford, I'm going to allow you to talk. Hold on just a second. There you are. Oops. Wait a minute. Okay. For some reason, it's not.
Is that better? Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, Charity. One of the things that came up for me as you were talking was about the checklist of things to accomplish in a coaching session. That is always on my mind. Am I being a good enough coach if I am not making sure to make my way through that list that I know that I was taught? I need to accomplish in every session. And, you know, it's just a continuous work in progress for me. So I appreciate the confirmation that, you know, if we just put all that stuff aside, it makes it much easier to truly be present.
And, you know, one of the things I found helpful was to really just pick one thing at a time to work on. You know, like maybe you say for the next couple of months until I really feel like I've gotten it down, the only thing I'm going to worry about is making sure that I nail the coaching agreement in the beginning. After that, I don't care about the rest of it. I'm just going to really get clear on how to do that and do it really well. And then once you feel like you've gotten to that place, pick something else to work on. Try to do it all at once. It's like crazy. It's impossible. And that was my experience anyway. I was feeling very defeated when I took that approach of trying to do everything perfectly. And it just left me, feeling really defeated. So one thing at a time.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great. And one thing, Katie, and everyone in the chat, you have the option to send messages to the panelists or to send to everybody. So a lot of these things, Katie, that you were reading off were not able to be seen by everyone. They were just able to be seen by the three of us. So
okay.
It's good
Okay.
to, you know,
All right, terrific.
share.
Perfect. Yeah. Are there any other hands right now, or I'll go to the chat?
No other hands.
No other hands. Okay, we've got one question from Tora that says, when you catch yourself leading or not using their language as an example, what do you do? Do you stop, pause, and go back? What's your approach?
Love the question. Hang on to that because we're going to talk in just a few slides about how to bring yourself back and how to self-manage in those situations. So if I don't directly address it when we get there, Toral, please come back and remind me that we need to talk about that.
Okay, and then Mary has a comment. I love the comment that if you care, fully trusting your client, that if you cared fully feeling trust, if you're not present, if you're not trusting your client, and put down the pen. Yep, need to do that more. Sorry, can't fully trust the client. You're not present. Okay, thank you, Mary. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that whole idea of trust and presence is great. And then one last comment is Sandy saying her comment regarding sales was referring to when competing for a coaching engagement.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and that concludes all the comments that we've had posted.
Awesome. All right, then I will take it back from you, Meredith. Thank you. And Katie, thank you so much for that. We'll check back in with some more questions in a little bit, but let's go to the practical application of presence and where to begin. So first, I would invite you to think about just mindset going into your coaching sessions. You want to be always partnering fully. Remember, there's no hierarchy here between you and the client. You're dancing fluidly as equals. Always remember, and this goes up to that trust point we were just talking about a minute ago with the client, your client is capable, creative, competent. They do not need to be fixed. There's nothing broken about them. And you need to really internalize that going into those sessions. That'll really help amp up that trust you have in them. Believing your client has a unique and one-of-a-kind perspective to offer about their life is a huge one. They are the expert. They know exactly what needs to happen in order for their life to go in the direction they need it to go. Don't ever doubt that for a second. That'll really help you to trust and bring up presence as well in your sessions. And then finally, just seeing the client, going into your sessions thinking, I'm going to be witness to wherever we're going on this journey today. I'm going to shine that light on this client's greatness, on their brilliance. We're going to reveal obstacles. We're going to talk about how that client wants to handle them. And we're going to move forward. And this client is going to shine. And so those are all sort of some practical ways or practical places I would encourage you to begin thinking about presence. Now, for some reason I can't advance my slide here. It suddenly wants to not allow me to do that. Hang on here. Let me see what's going on. Okay. I don't know why I can't advance my slide, Meredith. There's something that I need control.
I wonder, there we go. There you go.
I hit a different button. I've been advancing it with there we go. I don't know what that was, but we're good now.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the things that we think about in terms of the PCC markers, so for those of you who are on your journey as an ACC or working toward the PCC, you're aware that there are these competencies, 11 of them, that we evaluate one another on as professional coaches. And one of those competencies, in fact, competency number 4, is called coaching presence. And underneath that competency, or within that competency, there are some particular what we call markers or indicators that the coach knows what they're up to with this particular competency, and they can demonstrate particular skills. So when you're on your coaching journey, the ICF, in terms of coaching presence, is looking for evidence that you can speak to the being of the coach and or excuse me, I should say to the being of the client, sorry, not the coach. You can speak to the being and the being of the coach. It's really about how you show up too. So that works there. It should be the being of the coach and the client, and who they are and what they're all about. And then also too, that the other part of this competency is that the coach really makes the invitation to partner. And so some of the things, and I have my list here, some of the things that we're looking at, there's 8 of these markers. So as you're kind of working on your own skills and thinking about things you might want to do or look at, if coaching presence is one of them, you're going to want to think about things like, are you reacting in response to the whole person of the client and what the client wants to accomplish in a given session? Are you observant? Are you empathetic? Are you responsive? Do you notice and explore energy shifts in your client, listening for that energy behind the words? Do you exhibit curiosity with your client with the intent of learning more? Are you partnering with them both in what happens in the session and supporting them to choose the direction they want to go? Are you inviting them to respond to your contributions as the coach, and no matter what, accept their response, right? Are you giving them options to choose from after they've expressed different possibilities? Are you able to feed that back to them and stay right there with them in terms of which one they want to go with? And do you encourage them to formulate their own learning throughout the conversation? So you can find all of that information when you go to the ICF website and just look at the PCC markers or core competencies for coaching. Those, though, are the things that, if you break it down, those are the skills you're going to look to really grow for yourself. All right, so that's sort of the official word on how to build presence, and I'm going to give you sort of my practical tools on how to build presence. So how to get at those things that we just talked about that the ICF wants to see. Number 1 thing you need to do in building presence is to build it for yourself, or to build presence through self-awareness. So really being present to yourself, being present to who you are. What are your values? What are your beliefs? What are your desires? What are your triggers? All that whole notion of know thyself is the very basic building block of building presence in a coaching relationship. If you aren't in touch with who you are, it is nearly impossible for you to be in touch with another human being. So really developing that sense of yourself and your being in your own life, how you show up, and being fully aware, huge. So here are some ways you can develop that self-awareness through practices of presence. So these are just a few, and there might be many more, and I encourage you to throw them up in the chat box if there's some here that you do that spark you to say, yes, that works. Or maybe there's one here on this list that, maybe there's something you do that's not on this list that you want to add. Chime in the chat box. But here are some things that I have found really help with developing my own self-awareness and my practice of presence. So of course, number 1 is mindfulness practices, right? Meditation. Also doing, we were just teaching last week, or yeah, it was last week, I think. We did an in-person module at the UW for our current students. And we talked about some of the practices of presence could be things like getting an app on your phone that reminds you to just pause and be present, or joining up with a group that meditates regularly, or finding some way to be mindful as doing your daily activities. Maybe you're mindfully eating, or maybe you're mindfully taking walks. Whatever it might be, mindfulness can really help you to get present right in the moment where you're at. Noticing your emotional triggers is another way to raise your self-awareness. Again, not judging yourself, not being mean to yourself. Treat yourself like you're your best friend, and just notice what triggers you. That can oftentimes be valuable learning for yourself that can then indirectly support your client when you're helping them down their journey. This third one here is so basic, but I tell you what, you guys, I can't tell you how many times I have spent months journaling, and it was so just priceless, right? And then for whatever reason, I fall off the wagon and I stop journaling for a few months, and I forget that I like to journal and that I get a lot from it. And then I find myself going into a dip, and I start talking to my own coach, and she's like, well, what's are you journaling? And I'm like, no, somewhere I lost my journaling time. So I applaud all of those of you who can keep up a regular journaling practice. I call my journaling practice intermittent journaling, because that's truly what I do. It's just, I've noticed this about myself, works for me for now. Maybe I'll change that up at some point in the future, but journaling really helps to become aware of your own thoughts. And it's a place where you can dump and let go of all that chitter chatter in your brain so that you can really focus in on what's important and be present with it. Get curious about your habit nature. One of my colleagues at the UW, Sharon Barber, is a masterful coach. She's also my co-instructor in the UW program, and she talks a lot about this notion of getting curious and noticing your habit nature. And I think those are really good words and very instructive for trying to understand what it means to be present with yourself and to gain awareness about how you behave and how you show up and what are you habituated to do or conditioned to do. And so having that awareness can really, I think, develop change for yourself, which again indirectly supports your own clients and their journey. And then finally, this would not be a complete list without saying hire a coach, for goodness sakes. If you are a coach and you don't have a coach, then that's a problem in my opinion. So I'm just saying, this is one of the key things, is get a coach. And if you are short on cash right now or don't want to spend your money on coaching, there are ways you can get peer coaching for free, buddy coaching. The ICF, I think, offers a coaching program where you can be matched with other coaches. I think they call it Coach Match. I don't know. Anyway, you'll have to double check, but there are options. Get a coach. It will raise your self-awareness and it will make you a better coach. All right, so let's check in and chat. What are some of your favorite practices of self-awareness that you use to heighten your presence? Maybe it's something you want to just underline that I've said, or maybe it's something that you do that we haven't mentioned.
Okay, we have got one in Mary in the chat. It says, I mini journal. I write down 3 good things that happened that day. I also write down 1 intention I want to focus on for the day and how to honor a value.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love the terminology too, mini journaling. Love it. I've heard of speed journaling before, but I think I like mini journaling better. Like it. Thank you, Mary. Great contribution. What else do we got out there?
Elizabeth says, I like to center myself before my coaching calls.
Yes. I don't know if you guys can see. Thank you, Elizabeth. But I'm actually here in my coaching office. This is my home office, and I'm just going to turn my camera ever so slightly. You can see here this is where I meet my clients if they want to do in person. And on the table here is a little candle, and I have some aromatherapy in the background over here. You can't see that part, but these are those kinds of grounding and centering items that I keep around for that exact purpose, Elizabeth. So thank you for bringing that up. Sometimes lighting a candle or having aromatherapy or just even turning down the lights and taking a quiet moment before your client comes in to ground and center can be huge for presence and for heightening presence.
Oh, terrific. And Mary gave a follow-up saying that 5 to 10 minutes a day is her mini journaling.
Nice. Okay, good. So it takes no time at all. No time at all. Super.
Okay, then Elizabeth says, yes, I light a candle too. And do we have any hands up, Meredith? I don't want to overlook that if there's anybody that wants to share.
No.
No. Okay. Then Lori Crawford says, after meditating in the morning, I answer 4 writing prompts. 1, my greatest act of kindness yesterday. 2, my great learning yesterday. 3, my intention for today. And 4, what am I grateful for today?
Thank you.
And Nicole writes, or did you have anything further on that, Charity? Okay. Nicole writes, working with my own coach has helped me be more present and empathetic regarding my own coaching clients, what my own coaching clients are experiencing.
Couldn't agree more. I'm right there with you. Thanks.
Yeah. And Christine Panka says, I love the mini journal idea. Candles are a must. And then Christina also had pointed out the ICF's reciprocal coaching program.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, that's the name of it.
6 sessions for $55. Also, student coaches a plug for student coaches getting hours from the Cohen cohort. Would love to be offered at reduced rates. So feel free to follow up with Charity, and she can get you in touch with somebody. Yeah. And that's all the chat right now.
Okay, perfect. Then let's keep going. So let's talk about how to build presence in a session, right? Coral, this gets a little bit at your question, and we'll get a little closer to answering it in a minute here. But it's all about developing how you be in that relational space in which you find yourself when you're coaching others. That's how we build presence in a session. So we were talking a minute ago about how do you build it for yourself, and now we're going to transition over to how do you build it in a session. So I'm going to offer you now the 3 practices that you can use to enhance presence and partnering in your own sessions. And then after we go through these, I'm also going to offer you some additional bonus ones. But if you can just start with these 3, I think you will be miles ahead on the journey of creating more presence in your own coaching practice. So the first one you see here is to fully offer and accept. And what we mean by this, and we'll dig into it in a minute here a little more, but you're going to offer insights, and then you're going to stay unattached. Let it go. Offer, let it go. Because when we don't do that, we take ourselves out of presence. When we become attached to a certain idea or wanting to hear a client say a certain thing or go in a certain direction, you're losing being right there with your client. So you got to be very careful about that. You can offer, let go, and just keep dancing with your client. Second thing up here, gentle curiosity. And you'll see here I have some words that say, be the scientist that's gently curious about the alien. Now this sounds maybe weird, but I had a master coach say this to me a couple weeks ago. I did a one-off with a coach whose name is Michael Stratford. And he said to me, you know, the number one thing we can sometimes do to increase our presence, because I told him that's what I wanted to work on in the session. So he said, you know, one of the things that we can do is imagine for a moment that the client in front of us is like, it's like you have just been dropped onto an alien planet as the coach, and you're looking at them and you're just so curious, like, wow, what is this being all about? What fuels them? What makes them tick? What do they like? What do they dislike? How do they act when they're angry? How do they respond when they're sad? Like, just really get gently curious of what that experience of living is like for that creature in front of you. And when you get into that mindset, I sometimes call it in my own brain the ET mindset, where you're just kind of like, remember that old alien ET from that Spielberg movie in the 80s? For those of you who do remember that, I was a kid, so some people may not know that one, but ET was an alien, and it seemed to me like he was always kind of doing this, you know, really curious. And they were very curious about him too. So be really curious, gently curious with your clients. That'll help you really stay present with them too, and to really partner to understand who they are and what they're about. And then finally, the third thing here is right focus, deeper learning. So you always want to keep the spotlight on the who, not so much on the what, and that is going to lead to deeper learning. So focus on the who, and that will take care of, or at least get you a long way toward the client discovering the answers to the what, all right? So let's dig in a little bit here, and I'm going to give you some ideas of how you might practically see this play out in a coaching conversation. So when you fully offer and accept with your client, you, again, stay completely unattached. And in a coaching session, it might sound something like this. So you might hear, I notice you're having a hard time with this client, this new way of thinking about this, right? Well, as we've talked about, there are some issues with this statement. Number one, the right on the end is a bit leading. So that takes you out of presence. And you're not really partnering here. You're just sort of saying, this is what I think. Don't you agree with me? So the upgrade I offer underneath this is to think about saying things more in this way, where you would say, I'm picking up that this new way of thinking may be challenging for you, which is understandable. What's your experience of this like? So really stopping them, saying, here's what I'm noticing. Are you noticing it too? And not being attached to a yes or no or whether or not it's true, but just asking them, what do you think? That's what partnering is all about. It's about saying, this is what I think. What do you think? Not directing or leading. Gentle curiosity. This is how this might show up in a session. So you might hear the coach respond with something like, what do you want to do when you feel angry towards your brother? Not a bad question. Certainly could lead to some interesting insights about behavior. But I would offer that an upgrade particularly regarding coaching presence would be to say, what's it like for you when this anger towards your brother comes up? And they might say, wow, it makes me really sad. And what's that like? Well, it makes me feel like we're miles apart from each other. And what's that like? Feels lonely. I miss my brother. However this conversation might go. So it's not so much about what do you do when you're angry, because that question could be answered with, well, I tell him, screw you, and I hang up on him, right? That there could be some learning there, but I think that you get a lot more deeper learning when you ask the client questions that are going to allow them to get a deeper understanding of who they are, not so much what they do. And when they understand who they are, that will help them then to understand what they want to do in a particular situation. So that gentle curiosity, this is an example of that. And then finally, an example of right focus, deeper learning. So here's one offering. So they might be telling you about a situation at work, and as the coach, you might say, well, what's the best way to solve this problem with your coworker? And that might be a good question. That might be helpful and valuable to the client. I would encourage you, though, to think for a moment, too, about that sort of right focus on not so much the problem, what's the way to solve the problem, but instead to say, what are you learning about yourself as you work through how to solve this problem? And that deeper insight, inevitably, just trust it, you guys, inevitably it leads to them then understanding and getting the right answer themselves for how they want to solve the problem. They may say, well, I'm learning that if I can just take a breath, I feel a lot more calm and I can approach the situation with a much clearer head. All right, well, there you have it, right? So that can sometimes, as I will just offer it as an upgrade, when you're trying to stay present with your client, you're really wanting to deepen that awareness, not solve the problem, but really get curious about what's going on for them internally in the moments that they're describing the situation. All right, so now I'm going to offer you some bonus practices of presence. This first one here is from my mentor coach, Carly Anderson, and she always says to us, listen from the very first breath of the conversation. And I cannot tell you how much that has helped me in establishing presence right out of the gate in the beginning of a session. Because she says basically, as soon as the client opens their mouth, you be right there listening. Listen for every pitch, tone, hesitation, giggle, whatever. Be there from the moment of the very first breath to the end of the coaching conversation. Listen. And sometimes when you put that filter on the way you show up in coaching sessions, it can have a huge impact. At least that's been my experience. So sometimes before I get on the call, I'll think to myself, listen from the very first breath. And as soon as I get on with the client, then boom, away we go. Very first breath. All right, Toral, then going back to your question, what do you do in the middle of a session when you're finding that you're tuning out? I always say this is where my practice of meditation helps me, because when I find I'm tuning out and I'm kind of dropping down into the level 1 and I'm thinking about, oh yeah, I need to put those chicken thighs in the crock pot by 3 o'clock if we're going to have dinner by 7. We all do it. It's human. Can't do anything about it. But that's where meditation can help you learn to gently bring yourself back. Don't berate yourself. Don't say, oh, I suck as a coach. Why can't I just stay on with my client? Your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain is meant to go bing, 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 bing with ideas. But the good news is, when you're in a situation where you want to be fully present, you can learn to gently bring yourself back to the present moment. And so I would encourage you in those moments when you're finding that you're doing that, to just gently, again, bring yourself back. And then when you do that, you'll find that you can stay tuned into the energy behind the words a lot more easily and really be with your client in a session. I think I said earlier too that sometimes I will close my eyes or put my hands over my eyes or just put my head down and listen. That really helps me to be with the client, particularly when I find I'm being distracted by visuals or by just random thoughts. Like it helps me to kind of just go dark in my own visual field. So I would try that. That might be helpful. The third bonus practice here I would offer to you is to put your internal settings or your internal radar before you meet with the client on empathy and responsiveness. Remember I said your very first job as a coach is to show up as a human being with empathy and understanding. That leads your client to trust you more, and that's where you get connection. And that is so critical for trust. So, which is critical for partnering and presence, I mean. So just set that internal setting, that radar on empathy and responsiveness. Maybe you can put those two words on Post-its in front of you before you do a call. Or maybe you light one candle for empathy and one candle for responsiveness. Say a little prayer for yourself and the client, whatever it might be, but empathy and responsive. So you're showing up with a kind heart, an open heart, and you're being responsive to what the client brings, responsive to what the client says, responsive to the client's energy in the session, not to what you think they should be doing, not to what you might have in your mind that they should do next, but just really being responsive to what they're bringing up in the moment. And then finally here, this is my last one I'll offer, is to be real with your clients. And what I mean by that is, if you're in the middle of a coaching session and you feel like you missed something they said because you got distracted, or maybe the conference call line cut out on you for a moment, or whatever it might be, I have no problem saying to my clients, hang on, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you just repeat that? I didn't quite hear that. Or even if I'm in person with them, I'll say, hold on, say that again. I want to make sure I'm clear on what you said just right there. So don't be afraid to get clarity and to ask questions. I was coaching a client like a month ago, and she was from South Africa. So she had an accent that I'm not attuned to hearing. And there were times when I had to say, I'm sorry, but can you say that again? I want to make sure I hear it right. And you know what that did? It actually created a bond between us, because she's like, wow, you could tell she was like, this woman is really listening to me. And she was happy to say, yeah, no, let me repeat. And it made me then be able to stay so much more present with her and be right there with what she was saying. So don't ever shy away from asking your client to clarify or repeat if that's what you need to do in this session. All right, so that brings us pretty much to the end here in terms of the content that I wanted to share. So I'd like to do one final check-in and chat and a Q&A here. What questions do you still have, or what's unclear? And what would you like to hear more about? We've got, I think, about 5 or so minutes before Katie will take the baton and close it for us. So go ahead, feel free to pipe up. And thanks to you guys for all the participation today. This has been really great. I've done a ton of webinars, and I think this has been one of the chatty, Cathiest groups I've had. So I really appreciate that. It's really fun for me.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Charity. There is one comment from the last Q&A that came in that is from Kinga, saying that she also lights a candle and that she puts on her grandma's ring, who she looks up to as a person who's a true person living a full life. This way I get her energy and I can show up as a more powerful coach.
Love that. Very nice. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I used to have a coach that said she used to put on she had this one cape she would wear whenever she coached. I thought, oh, that's interesting. It made her feel like she was being more powerful. So certainly use items like that. Great suggestion.
Oh, terrific. And then Sharon Barber says, beautiful. Thank you so much. I need to hop off now. Carol.
I'm glad you were here.
Sharon, yeah. And we'll be hearing more from Sharon and Toral in October when we do a deeper dive into presence on a webinar. Carol says, when I get distracted, I write down the last word my client said to help me refocus.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And then Mary says, I make a statement under practical applications. Coach makes invitation to partner. Can you drill down on that meaning?
So basically, doing things like saying, I'm hearing an energy shift, client. What do you think? Or what's your experience of this right now? Really inviting them to offer, to not say this is what's happening, but to say this is my experience of what's happening. What's yours? So imagine if you're on a dance floor dancing and someone's like, oh my gosh, I just tripped over my own feet. Do you find this is hard to dance to? They might say, actually, I'm really having a great time. This is an easy one for me to go to. And okay, great. Well, they're not wrong and you're not wrong. You're just being present with one another's experience. And then the client will guide you from there.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Are there any hands raised that want to talk, Meredith?
No.
Okay. Well, got it. Then Mary just follows up. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people have more questions that start to percolate or pop up after the webinar, they are more than welcome to reach out to me. I put my charity@charityjet.com address here. This is not my UW address, but this is my consulting and coaching business address. You're welcome to reach out to me here through that. And certainly if you're interested in our coaching program at the UW, I put the website up here and you can take a peek. We are opening enrollment for that in February. So if anybody has people who might be interested, have them reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions. And other than that, thank you so much to everyone. I don't know if there's any, yeah.
We've got one more great question from Nicole saying you shared the PCC markers for presence. Any distinctions for the MCC?
Well, I would, yeah, put the PCC markers on steroids.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to have a separate conversation about that, Nicole, I'm happy to do that. But basically, you just want to really up the ante on empathy, on deep connection, and on responsiveness to the client, and just staying right there with them the whole time. And there's a lot more nuance that goes into it than that, but take those PCC markers and just up the ante on them, and that's really what you're looking to do. There's also the ICF, and you guys probably know this. I don't have it handy here, but they have, I guess you call it like a handout, where they show you for each competency, there is a list of this is what, for this competency and these markers, this is what we expect to see at the ACC level, at the PCC level, and at the MCC level. So I would encourage you to dig around for that. And if you don't have it, let me know and I can, I'll see if I can forward a copy to you, or get you a link.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Charity. And Nicole says, thanks, Charity, great stuff. And from Lori, Charity, this was a spectacular webinar. I'm looking forward to reviewing the PowerPoint again and listening to the recording.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for being here, everyone. I so appreciate the time.
Yeah, and we have such wonderful attendees there. Mary has shared that the document that you mentioned, Charity, is called ICF Core Competency Rating Levels, and it is on the ICF website.
Great. ICF Core Competency Rating Levels. Thank you, Mary.
Awesome. Okay, and that's all we've got on the chat for now.
Actually, there's one more question I think that came in. It's from Nina about when I ask a client question like, what is your experience with this? She has difficulty understanding what I'm asking of her. What suggestions do you have to help the client to be able to engage in questions like that?
Well, right out of the gate, what comes to my mind is to use the client's language. So if they say, you know, I'm really having a hard time dealing with picking life balance, right? Well, what's your experience of life balance been like so far? So instead of saying, what's your experience of this, you might use specific language that might help them to really get present in the moment. Or you might say, I'm noticing right now that the energy feels heavy in this room. Does the energy, do you agree that the energy, or how would you say, you'd want to say something like, what's the energy feeling like for you in this moment? So I would say to really, Nina, go back to some of those specific words that the client is using. That might help ground it more internally for them. And because I know sometimes our coaching parlance makes people go, huh? what are you talking about? And if they've never been coached before particularly, that can be challenging. So I would say ground it in their language as much as you can. And if you have to use more than 4 or 5 words to get your point across and ask the question, then just go ahead and do that until you find some languaging that works for you.
Okay, terrific. And thank you, Meredith, for catching Nina's question.
No problem. It's a lot to keep up with sometimes.
Yeah. And Nina says thanks and love your energy, love spending the hour with you. Lots of positive feedback for you, Charity.
Oh, good. Well, it was my pleasure. And thanks, everyone. I know we're all really busy, and I just appreciate you popping in and spending some time with us here. And I think this is great what the ICF is up to in terms of offering the CEUs for this. So it's a great way to learn and to continue to develop as coaches. So thank you guys for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome. Our pleasure. And thank you, Charity, for presenting, and thank you all attendees for showing up. And as Charity mentioned, and we talked about earlier, today's presentation does qualify for 1.5 credits of CCEUs, and Meredith will be sending you an email with your verifying your credit and affirming that. And she will also, with that, send a link to the 2019 webinar lineup. We've got some terrific speakers. The next one coming up is February 14th, Mary Kravitz, speaking on more client, less marketing. And then on February 28th, we've got one on assessments with Jewel Marie. And then later in the year, as I mentioned, Sharon Barber will be doing a deeper dive into presence, and she is co-presenting with Toro Livingston Jaw. And then we have a couple of other exciting speakers, Marsha Reynolds as in August, and Jennifer Britton toward the end of May. So just lots and lots of good stuff to look forward to. So we're so happy you're here. And if anybody has anything else, any topics they specifically want to hear about, feel free to send an email to Meredith or myself or anybody on the education committee, and we'd be happy to see what we can do to meet that need through webinars. And one other exciting thing that the Education Committee is doing is demo coaching. In April and in October, Charity is going to do demonstrate coaching, and we will have a coach, a client, and then a third person who will be like a triad coaching. We'll talk about what they're seeing in the coaching. So that's going to be a fun one to watch for too. So thanks so much for attending. We're grateful for your attendance, and the higher attendance we have in the meetings, the better and more robust offerings we can do. So thanks for tuning in. And one last thing is new this year, we're able to offer the CCEU credits for on-demand listeners. So register, and if you are able to attend live, great. And if not, you can watch on demand and still get your credits this year. There's a short quiz to take at the end of the webinar, and that will qualify for the ICF credits. So that is all I've got. Meredith, our Charity, do you have any concluding remarks?
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, great. And we're right at our time, so we'll respect everyone's commitment and we'll let you go. Thanks. Have a wonderful day, and we are excited for 2019 as well. Thanks, Toro. Toro gave us a nice comment at the end. So thanks so much for showing up. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.